Is age the last bastion of discrimination?
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
This week, I'm talking to Eleanor Mills, who's editor-in-chief at Noon, and it's a new platform that's designed to support women in midlife as they go through transformations. And there's something really poignant in this for me, because 2 years ago, Eleanor Mills transformed my life. She put my book on the front page of the Sunday Times magazine, and overnight, I got hundreds and hundreds of incoming messages from people wanting to share their experiences, connecting with what I'd written, and talking about the subjects that I was interested in, which probably pretty directly lead to me being here today and running a vlog. Eleanor now wants to think about transformation at mass scale and help women all over the country think about the next chapter of their lives. Have a listen to her thoughts.
Age is the final frontier. I think there's a huge cohort of women in midlife who are being ignored or overlooked by the corporate world. If you look at the top of that 2,000 people who are going to be selected for board jobs, only a third of those appointments still are going to women. And that's really stubbornly stuck over the last 5 years. So while we've seen a big increase in women NEDs, non-executive directors, the pipeline is still really not that equal. It's actually going backwards because of COVID. We put out a video launching Noon last week, and a very senior woman posted, "I've always thought that it's exactly at this point that you get a double whammy of ageism and sexism. You're not one of the chaps. I think there's a circling of the wagon. We know it's always very hard to get up into those board positions because many are called but few are chosen. There's a lot of senior men quite liking having rather attractive younger women around, and so that's all quite pleasing when you're younger. But I think you hit a point in midlife where A, you're not going to be around for those reasons, and two, you're rather less malleable and rather more forthright in what you know. A powerful woman in her midlife moving into her prime is maybe actually quite scary to some of these men at the top. We don't feel old. I don't feel old. I feel like I'm just getting started. I feel like I'm moving into my next chapter. Look at Major Tom. He got to 100, in which case we're only halfway through. That's why we've called our initiative Noon. We think it's the middle of the day and the sun is at its highest. If you've been made redundant or you've been bereaved or divorced and you're suddenly thrust into a whole new phase of life, what do you do? How does that work for you? How do we help you through that transition into a kind of sunnier next chapter? And I think that we all need to be thinking about we're going to live for a long time. And these midlife women particularly do. What I want to do is recast this moment as a point of opportunity. I've got a woman who was a civil servant and hated it, went back to train to be a doctor. She became a medic at 50. Or a woman who became a stand-up comedian at 60 and is doing incredibly well. Another woman who just had her first book published at 78. We need to think about what our lives look like.
Now, as ever with these conversations, there's always a doorknob element, the thing people say just before the conversation ends. And with Eleanor, it was really about senior women in apparently senior roles who may not have as much power as we think.
We'd like to do something about all these women who look like they have really senior jobs, who are basically fluffers to senior men.
I've done that job.
I've done that job. We all have.
Yeah.
Basically, if you're a senior woman in an organisation, a lot of your responsibility or your role is to be social oil and make the life easier of the very senior boss.
Brilliant thing on Twitter this week, let's stop talking about imposter syndrome and start talking about how we deal with the narcissists and the psychopaths.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly.
Yes.
Why are we all like, oh, I'm not sure I'm good enough? I mean, what about these arseholes we've all worked with?
We'll know that we've got equality when there are lots of really bloody useless women running massive companies.
That brought to mind the question that Oprah Winfrey asked Meghan.
Were you silent or were you silenced?
And what I'm interested in is whether apparently powerful and influential women who do have the senior roles, whether they are able to speak their truth and whether they have as much power as we assume. And if you're one of those women and you have something to comment, maybe you do have that power or maybe you don't, get in touch, let me know. I'm interested in thinking more about that. The other subject which has been in my mind this week and keeps coming back to me is what about the men? I interviewed a woman for the Telegraph piece and she said, do you know, Christine, it's great we're talking about the women, but there's a whole generation of men in their late 40s, 50s and older who are never going to work again after COVID. What about them? So if you're in that group and you've got something to say, if you're thinking about that group and you have observations, get in touch. Let me know what's on your mind. Final thought today, sign up for Noon, share it, get involved, read some of the stuff. It's great. Talk to me about men. Next week, unbelievable, 1 year anniversary of me vlogging. Don't know what I'm going to say. I'm going to talk about what I've learned, whatever that is. I'll see you next week. Have a good week.